Hey everybody, Mrs. Cornell signing in here. I hope you're having a great day. Today we're going to be talking about solving inequalities. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, so we've got our solving inequalities here. A couple things when we're solving inequalities. So first of all, we want to make sure that we understand that solving inequalities is not going to work a whole lot differently than when we just solve our regular equations. So we're going to still add and subtract to both sides, those kind of things. Okay, the main thing here is that we want to remember to flip our sign or our inequality symbol if we divide or multiply by a negative number on both sides of the inequality. Okay, so we want to make sure that we're getting rid of that negative, but when we do that, we have to multiply or we have to flip our sign. Okay, and then when we're graphing our inequality, because some problems will ask us to graph our solution, okay, if we have a greater than or less than symbol, this is going to mean that we have an open circle when we're graphing. And then if we have the equal to, so less than or equal to or greater than or equal to, we're going to use a closed circle. And we'll talk more about that when we actually go to the graphing part. Okay, so our first problem here, we're going to solve and graph this guy. Okay, so imagine this was an equal sign right here. What would we do? Well, we'd subtract 4 on both sides, right? So let's go ahead and actually do that to this problem. So I'm going to subtract 4 on both sides. That leaves me with 2x is greater than or equal to 12. And then I can divide by 2 on both sides. So again, like we set up here in this first step, solving inequalities works similar to solving equations. There's not a whole lot different going on. Okay, so if this would have been a negative 2, and I would have divided by negative 2 on both sides, I would have had to flip this inequality symbol around and it would have become a less than. But because it's a positive 2, I can keep it just the way it is and say x is greater than or equal to 6. So there is my solution. You want to make sure that you always have a solution that looks just like that, where you have a variable, an inequality symbol, and then an answer or a number. You cannot just write 6 for these ones, where when you're solving equations, 6 would be just fine. Here, that's not going to work. Because when I'm looking at your answer, I use that to grade your number line or your graph. Okay, so our graphs with solving inequalities, we're going to put our answer in the middle hash here, so that's going to be a 6, and then we're going to go 1 on either side. Some teachers may have had you put more numbers. I'm just going to have you put 3 numbers on your number line. Okay? Now, because this is a symbol that is greater than or equal to, so it's one of these guys, that means I have a closed circle on my number line at 6. And because it says greater than 6, x is greater than 6, my line is going to go to the right because the numbers that are greater are to the right. All right, let's look at another example here. Okay, so if we're solving this guy just like an equation, so if we were to imagine this is an equal sign, what would we do? Well, we'd distribute this 3, or this negative 3. So negative 3 times x gives me negative 3x. Negative 3 times 4 gives me negative 12 or minus 12. Okay, I'm going to add the 12 to both sides. So those cancel. I'm left with negative 3x in my symbol and a 24. Okay, well, my last thing I need to do is actually divide by negative 3. Okay, well, because I'm dividing by a negative on both sides, I'm going to put my x down. And I'm going to put the negative 8 over here because these two divided gives me negative 8. But now I need to flip my symbol because I divided by a negative on both sides. Okay, so that might be a note that you want to write to yourself. Symbol flips because divided by negative on both sides. All right, so here's my answer. X is less than negative 8. If I'm making my number line, I'm going to put a negative 8 right in the middle. One number bigger than negative 8 would be negative 7, and one smaller is negative 9. This time I'm going to have an open circle because there's not that line underneath here. And it says x is less than, so I'm going to go to the left. So rule of thumb, if it's eating the variable, it's going to go to the right. So this one's not eating the variable. If we look back at our last example, This one right here, it was eating the variable, so it's open to the variable. That's why it went to the right. Okay, that's another way to look at it. Okay, did you know that McDonald's actually used to serve broccoli flavored bubble gum, and it was tested by children and they definitely did not approve it. They thought the flavor was a little bit odd, but it was McDonald's way of trying to be a little bit healthier for their kids. Definitely not a hit though. All right, next one. Okay, so if we look at this guy, all right, we want to get rid of this 6 here. So imagine we're solving an equation. So multiply by 6. So I'm going to do that over on this side too. So far I don't need to flip my symbol because this is a positive 6 that I'm multiplying by. So I'm left with negative 24c. Symbol stays the same, and then 5c plus 58 here. Okay, so this equation looks a little bit different. Remember, your goal is to get all the variables on one side, so I'm actually going to move this 5c over to the other side by subtracting it. Okay, so if I do that, that gives me negative 29c is less than or equal to 58. And I'm going to divide by negative 29 on both sides. So if you think about that, what that means for a second, you're going to end up dividing by a negative. So that means that you have to actually flip this symbol. Okay, and that's going to be negative 2 when you divide those out, and you have c here. So there's your actual answer. And then if we're going to make our graph, negative 2 goes in the middle. One bigger would be negative 1, one smaller is negative 3. This time we're going to have a closed circle because it's got the equal to sign underneath. And it's eating the variable, or it says c is greater than, so we're going to go to the right. All right, we've got 2 more left here. Okay, so our number 4, imagine again this is an equal sign, so we're going to subtract 4 on both sides first to solve that. So I've got x over negative 3 is greater than 4. Again, we didn't multiply or divide by a negative, so that's why I didn't have to flip my sign here. Now I'm going to multiply by negative 3 to get rid of that division. And so I have x, and this is a negative 12 over here, but I multiplied by a negative, so I have to flip my symbol. Again, this is probably the trickiest thing, is realizing when you have to flip your symbol or not. Sometimes we go a little bit fast and we forget about that part. Okay, so make sure you are taking the time to identify when you have to flip that symbol and not. Okay, so negative 12, negative 11, negative 13 is my number line. We're going to have a closed circle because there's that line underneath here. It's not eating the x, so that means it's less than. So we're going to go this way. All right, and then our last problem here. Okay, so I actually am going to move my 3x to this side because I know that that would end me with a positive x's over here, and I don't have to worry about flipping my sign then. Okay, so that leaves me then with 6 is greater than 2x minus 10. I'm going to add the 10 over. So that gives me 16 is greater than 2x. I'm going to divide by 2. And again, I don't need to flip my sign at all because I just divided by a positive number. So I have 8 then is greater than x. Remember, you keep your answer in the same order as which you are doing the problem. So the x is on the right. Notice my answer ended with the x on the right. All right, let's make our number line. So we've got an 8 here, a 9, and a 7. Make sure your number line always goes in order from least to greatest. We're going to have an open circle because there's no line underneath. And this time it's really important that you ask yourself, is the symbol eating the x? Is it open to the x? And the answer is no, it's closed to the x. So this is actually a less than problem. Okay, it says x is less than 8. It's not eating the x. So there's your number line right here. All right, and that is solving inequalities. I hope you guys learned a ton, and we will see you next time.